disguised as news, why the Express's UNC headquarters article is editorial propaganda masquerading as journalism, an editorial by Professor Wall Street. Fourth Estate abandons objectivity to amplify Keith Rowley's talking points. The Trinidad Express published an article on March 29, 2026, titled, "No Place to Call Home, UNC Without a Permanent Headquarters After 37 Years," by Camari Rodriguez. On first glance, it appears to be straightforward news. But read it carefully and something becomes unmistakably clear. This is not journalism. This is an editorial opinion piece disguised as news, designed to embarrass the UNC government by amplifying a Keith Rowley talking point that has absolutely nothing to do with governance, policy, or citizens' lives. The article is deceitful, disingenuous, dishonest, and underhanded. It represents exactly why the population cannot trust Trinidad and Tobago's Fourth Estate, because major newspapers like the Express are P&M leaning and will publish any garbage to make the UNC government look bad, even when the story has zero news value. Let's be clear. This is Keith Rowley's press conference rant, repackaged as news by the Express, published 12 days after Rowley made his comments, with no news hook, no public interest justification, and no connection to any current event or policy issue. It is propaganda with a byline. Here are 10 reasons why this is editorial opinion disguised as news. 1. The entire story is based on Keith Rowley's press conference rant, not news. Why is this suddenly news on March 29, 2026? What happened to make this relevant? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The only reason this article exists is because Keith Rowley, during his bitter March 17th press conference, where he called the Prime Minister a jamet, made a snide comment. If you had done the same thing for your party, you might have had a headquarters. Where is your effort for the last 15 years to get a party headquarters? That's it. Keith Rowley said something mean 12 days earlier, and the Express turned his insult into a 1,200-word news article investigating whether the UNC owns real estate. This is not journalism. This is transcription of opposition talking points with a news format wrapped around it. 2. The article has zero news value or public interest. Why does it matter whether the UNC owns or rents its headquarters? How does this affect governance, policy, crime, the economy, healthcare, education, or infrastructure? It doesn't, at all. The UNC government has been in office for 11 months. They've halted a property tax, honored wage settlements, reduced gas prices, introduced stand your ground legislation, secured US support for Dragon Gas, restored the laptop program, completed repairs to 279 schools, and are advancing Petrotrin refinery restart talks. But the Express chose to investigate whether the party rents or owns office space. This is character assassination disguised as reporting. When a newspaper publishes a lengthy article on something with zero impact on governance, it's not fulfilling a journalistic function, it's pursuing a political agenda. 3. The timing is suspicious. Published 12 days after Rowley's comment. If this were genuinely newsworthy, why did the Express wait 12 days after Rowley's March 17th press conference to publish it? News is supposed to be timely. If Rowley's comment was the hook, the article should have appeared March 18th or 19th. This delay proves this wasn't breaking news. This was a deliberate effort to create a negative narrative about the UNC, using Rowley's insult as justification for what is essentially an opposition research document published as news. 4. The article amplifies Rowley without critically examining his credibility. The Express quotes Rowley extensively, presenting his attack as if it's legitimate criticism worthy of journalistic investigation. But the Express never asks, why is Keith Rowley, who just called the Prime Minister a sexually degrading term, being treated as a credible source? Why does he care about UNC real estate when his government left the country with declining energy production, rising debt, and 625 murders in 2024? Why is he deflecting from Balizé House funding allegations? By uncritically amplifying Rowley's attack and turning it into a lengthy investigation, the Express is doing Rowley's political work for him, legitimizing a deflection tactic. 5. The article treats party real estate ownership as a measure of legitimacy. The implicit message is that not owning headquarters makes the UNC somehow less legitimate or less capable than the PNM. This is absurd. Does renting office space make a political party less effective? Does owning a building make a government better at reducing crime or managing the economy? Of course not. But by framing the UNC's rental arrangements as embarrassing, particularly in contrast to the PNM's own Balizé House, the Express implicitly argues that property ownership equals political legitimacy. This is propaganda revealing the editorial bias. 6. The article ignores the elephant in the room. How did the PNM pay for Balizé House? Here's what's truly dishonest. The Express treats Balizé House ownership as positive, while completely ignoring the central controversy. How did the PNM pay for a $100 million building? The Prime Minister raised serious questions. The PNM claimed to be $4 million in debt, then suddenly built a $100 million headquarters. 105,000 raffle tickets were printed, but most funds were never remitted. 3 contractors paid for large numbers of tickets and 2 won cars. CPEP URP workers were mandated to contribute. 5 major contractors used unmarked trucks. Not a single cent came from the PNM. These are serious allegations of potential corruption, money laundering, and misuse of state resources deserving investigation. But instead of investigating how the PNM paid for Balizé House, the Express published a lengthy article suggesting the UNC should be embarrassed for renting office space. This is journalistic malpractice. 7. The article relies on no response to create negative inference. The Express writes, the Sunday Express asked Kanhai and other party executives for details, but no response was received. Later, but received no response appears multiple times. This is a classic propaganda technique. Ask questions about a non-issue, then report that people didn't respond as if the lack of response proves something sinister. But why should UNC officials respond to questions about rental agreements? What public interest is served by disclosing private rental terms? Why should they dignify Rowley's deflection tactics with a response? The Express knows most people will just read no response was received and assume the UNC is hiding something. This is manipulation, not journalism. 8. The article is built on false equivalence. The entire premise rests on false equivalence, comparing the UNC's rental of office space to the PNM's ownership of Balizé House as if these are equivalent situations deserving equal scrutiny. UNC situation: rents office space, moves occasionally, pays rent from party funds, no questions about funding sources, completely normal business practice. PNM situation: claims to be in debt, suddenly builds $100 million headquarters, funding sources unclear, serious questions about raffle tickets, allegations of contractor involvement, potential corruption concerns. One situation is completely normal and unremarkable. The other involves serious allegations deserving investigation. But the Express treats them as equivalent or worse, suggests the UNC's rental situation is more noteworthy than the P&M's questionable financing. This false equivalence is propaganda designed to distract from real issues by creating a fake issue. 9. The article ignores that renting is often the smart business decision. For many organizations, renting is actually the smart financial decision. Flexibility to relocate, no long-term debt obligations, no maintenance costs, no property tax, capital used for operations and campaigns instead of buildings, no risk of property value decline, ability to scale as circumstances change. The UNC has been in and out of government 3 times with periods in opposition when resources are limited. Renting provides flexibility that ownership doesn't. This is basic business sense. But the Express doesn't present renting as legitimate business decision. They present it as evidence of failure or embarrassment. This editorial framing, presenting one side as inherently better without examining actual merits, proves this is opinion, not news. 10. The publication of this article proves exactly what critics say about Trinidad's media. The most damning thing about this Express article is what it proves. Major newspapers are willing to publish opposition propaganda dressed as news. They'll investigate trivial non-issues about the UNC while ignoring serious questions about the P&M. And they'll abandon basic journalistic standards to advance a political agenda. This is why people don't trust the media. This is why the fourth estate has lost credibility. When newspapers publish 1,200 words investigations into whether a political party rents or owns office space, triggered solely by an opposition politician's insult, while ignoring serious questions about $100 million in questionable financing, they're not serving the public interest. They're serving a political agenda. The Express's publication of this article is a confession. They're not an independent newspaper committed to holding all sides accountable. They're a P&M-leaning publication willing to publish garbage to make the UNC government look bad, even when the story has zero news value. In conclusion, propaganda with a byline. The Express's UNC without a permanent HQ after 37 years article is not journalism. It's editorial opinion disguised as news. It's opposition propaganda given a journalistic format. It's Keith Rowley's deflection tactics legitimized by a newspaper byline. Every element, the timing, the framing, the false equivalence, the editorial judgments presented as facts, the amplification of opposition talking points, the investigation of a non-issue, proves this is not news reporting. It's political opinion masquerading as journalism. The Express had a choice. Investigate serious allegations about $100 million in questionable Bali-Zay house financing, or investigate whether the UNC rents office space. They chose the latter. That choice reveals everything about their editorial priorities and political leanings. When a newspaper publishes opposition research as news, when they investigate trivial non-issues while ignoring serious questions, when they amplify one side's talking points while creating false narratives about the other, they're not fulfilling their fourth estate responsibilities. They're abandoning them. The Express owes readers an explanation. Why did you publish this? What news value does it serve? What public interest does it advance? And why are you investigating UNC rental agreements while ignoring P&M financing questions? Until they answer those questions, readers should understand exactly what this article represents. Propaganda disguised as news, published by a P&M-leaning newspaper willing to abandon journalistic standards to make the UNC government look bad. The fourth estate has failed again. And articles like this are exactly why citizens have stopped trusting Trinidad's major newspapers.